Hello everyone, this is my first ever video on YouTube, and I want to start with a big one. Today I'll be talking about why DIO is the true protagonist of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. DIO has definitely done some evil things, but it's very possible he's the true protagonist of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. In part 1, he's the catalyst for the entire story. He introduces the stone mask to the story, and is the only reason Jonathan does anything. In part 1, DIO shows a lot of similarities to a shonen protagonist. For one, he has a tragic backstory, where his father had worked his mother to death and abused him, whereas Jonathan, during his childhood, was definitely a little spoiled. DIO was abused and hardworking, and we see Jonathan being scolded for his lack of manners. We also see DIO showing wit by beating someone in chess, and he's abused by the guy he beats. DIO has the opportunity to kill him, but just chooses not to. Another similarity to shonen protagonists is DIO's dream. He dreams to become the richest man in the world from poverty, whereas Jonathan's only goal is to stop DIO. DIO also has to sacrifice something to achieve his dream. He sacrifices his humanity by becoming a vampire, and also loses his ability to see the sun. The majority of the points so far are mentioned by a guy called the Weird One. He also worships Lord Nuxenor, like a soul, and mentions some of DIO's flexes. His video will be linked in the description. And if DIO back to the video, if DIO hadn't fought Jonathan and used the stone mask, 3 important things wouldn't have happened. Number 1, Jonathan wouldn't have learnt Hamon. Number 2, Lisa wouldn't have lost her parents. Number 3, George Joestar II wouldn't die. These things are important events that have a large influence on part 2. If Jonathan wouldn't have learnt Hamon, Joseph wouldn't have already known it. If Lisa hadn't lost her parents, then Erino wouldn't have had to adopt her. And if George Joestar II didn't die, then Lisa wouldn't have had to kill the vampire who killed George. If all this wouldn't have happened, the Pillar Men would have taken over the world with Joseph's lack of Hamon, no Caesar with Hamon, and due to the fact Lisa wouldn't have trained him, and the end of the world. And if you say that the events of part 1 have effects on the events of part 2, yes they do, but the Pillar Men were bound to come. Joseph had to be alive. He'd have to be an expert on Hamon, an absolute genius to defeat them. Now, part 3, it seems like DIO is the antagonist. He sends waves of enemy at Jotaro and the gang, and he's a lot more crazy during the end after absorbing Joseph's blood. He's on an ego trip during the end. But I think it's the other way around. The Joestar family wouldn't have gotten stands, and DIO's obviously a great leader. He convinces the majority of the people to work for him through charisma, and yes, he does force some of them using flesh buds, but he does eventually offer to spare Polnareff. He loses, though, to essentially a delinquent who can stop time. Because if this was an actual shonen, DIO would have won because he trained his time stop. And he's a lot more politer person than Jotaro. Jotaro swears at his mother and is rude to his mother. Whereas DIO, in part 7, probably relates to part 1, Diego is shown to love his mother, like DIO does. Anyway, sorry for the spoiler. There'll be spoilers later in the video. I'll give you a warning. Part 4 wouldn't have happened if DIO didn't gain stand. Same thing there. Stand arrows with Enya. And part 4, if part 4 didn't happen, Kira would still likely have a stand, but Josuke wouldn't. It's likely that if Josuke didn't, it's likely that a lot of the members of Morio would have died through Kira's serial killing intent. And part 5 features Giorno, who is DIO's son. See, DIO's like the protagonist, with the sons taking the reins and bringing the end to the DIO story, the DIO bloodline, the Brando bloodline. But it's not completely true, but Giorno is DIO. He is very similar to DIO. He has the hair, for one. He did have Joestar hair, but he grew it out to those DIO locks. He does scream Muda, and he also gold experience, it's a yellow sand. It's a yellow sand. Like the, well, purple blue. Purpley blue. Like, Jotaro's stand is purple. Joseph's stand is purple. Holly's stand is kind of purple. What we see of it is purple-ish. It's got the purple fruit. Josuke's stand it's pinkish, but it's kind of purple. And Jolene's stand is dark blue, which is similar to purple. I know I'm grasping at straws. And then Giorno's stand is yellow. If that doesn't tell you something, it should. It's like the brother duo in part 5. Like the two brothers, the one with the fisherman and the Grateful Dead. Like his brother's stand is green, and the guy with the fisherman, his hair, it was Stan Beach Boys. His hair is green. So family color connection. Anyway, I'm grasping at straws. The rest of this will contain part 6 and 7 spoilers. So, if you want to avoid spoilers, go read them. I'll give you a warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, so, part 6 is the story that ends the original timeline. It follows Dio's worshipper, Pucci, trying to attain heaven. Pucci might as well be another Dio, because he really only cares to fulfill what Dio wanted. And in fact, he succeeds in a way. He does attain heaven, but loses it. But I feel like Pucci's Dio's successor. But really, I would argue part 7 is more about Dio being the protagonist. Alternate Diego, like I said before, he is the same as Dio. Except regular Diego is able to, he gets money. He marries an old elderly lady and likely murders her, which is a very Dio thing to do. But the actual connection is the alternate Diego that Valentine brings. Alternate Diego. He is very interesting. Now, Johnny Joestar does defeat Funny Valentine. Funny Valentine then brings back an alternate Diego, and we go to the final arc, High Voltage. A very, very good arc, in my opinion. Now, alternate Diego arrives, and it turns out he has the world, with the ability to stop time for 5 seconds. And this alternate Diego is exactly like Dio. Maybe even worse. He chucks knives at Johnny, and he puts wires up in the hopes of detaching Johnny from his head. And he also throws gasoline in the air and douses Johnny in it, and chucks matches at him. And it's just amazing. But what we also have is Johnny loses. Diego wins. Or Dio wins, really. He is Dio. His hat says Dio, and his nickname is Dio. So yes, Diego does win. He defeats Johnny, and he wins the entire sum of money. And he gets the Saint's corpse. He goes to Funny Valentine, allows him to open it, and the Saint's corpse begins to bend to his will. But then Lucy Steele shows up and ends him. And in the end, Johnny wins. But does he? Because Diego came very close to killing him, and all Johnny really gets is his learning how to walk again, which you could argue was his goal. But to be honest, I think the main point why Dio is the true protagonist, I've waffled a lot here, but the main point is that Dio is the only constant. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe.